All right, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at converting a fairly simple image into an embroidery file using InkScape and InkStitch. Now, I want to preface this video. This is a very basic, simple project, but it does actually take a fair bit of knowledge. All right, so do not get discouraged immediately because it's not going to make sense the first time you watch this video, maybe the second time, maybe the third time. But if you take it bit by bit by bit, you will get it. And once you get it, you're going to be literally off to the races. Because what I'm going to show you in this video is basically the exact same process no matter what image, even a complicated image. The process is exactly the same. There'll just be more of the process when you're dealing with a more complicated design. And when you watch some of the videos, when we have several different videos out there now, but when you watch some of the different videos, you're going to be like, oh yeah, he used that in the Bumblebee. Oh yeah, he used that in the Bumblebee. So don't get discouraged, okay? This is, there's a lot to cover, but like I said, this is a really good example of something quote unquote simple that I think most brand new people can grasp fairly easily, but it's not going to happen the first time you watch it. All right, I'm going to try and go slow so you can see exactly what I'm clicking on, try to describe everything I'm doing, but you're going to have to watch this probably 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you're going to, aha! Then it will make sense. When you sit down and actually try it yourself, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing now, okay? So let's just pop this artwork in and see what I'm talking about here. So it is this little bee somebody sent to me and said, hey, how do I make this? So here we go. Brand new to Inkscape, brand new to InkStitch. A lot of times what happens is people try to do something that's like way over the top. Like, no, that if you're brand new to Inkscape, you should not be starting with that logo. This little guy, perfect, because we're going to have to use all of the very basic fundamental things for every single embroidery design we're going to digitize in this little fella. So, and once you see it, you can be like, oh, okay, you're going to say, yeah, I can do that. All right. So here's our little guy. All right, let's look at the artwork. It's not terribly good artwork. All right. So if you can start with a vector image, that's really ideal. Okay, just about any vector image you could ever want is available on Etsy for little or nothing. So it would save you one step of the process. But this is good that we don't have a vector image in this case because we're trying to master our Inkscape skills so we can create whatever it is we want to create. And if you can create this little guy, you can create pretty much anything that you'll ever want to create. That's my personal belief. All right. So first things first, what do we do with him? He's a JPEG. He's not a very good one. Look at, he's all pixelated and yucky. So what we do is just right click and choose trace bitmap. Step 1. Okay. Now yours may not look exactly like this, but the first thing you want to do is make sure you're in brightness a cutoff. That's what I typically will use in almost every scenario. And then your next big thing that you're going to want to adjust is your threshold. Right? The more you go to the right, the darker your image gets. So I drag it till I see what I want to see in my preview and drag it a little bit more. And now I'm going to say I'm happy with that. Now, I don't really know what Speckles does. I don't really know what Optimize does. But smooth corners, we do want that. Now, in this case, if I toggle that on and off, I'm not seeing anything really change in my preview. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe you could leave it on. Maybe you could leave it off. I do sometimes see changes when I use this. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it on and hit apply. Now before I hit apply, I want you to really focus on our image. And now focus on the image. I'm going to hit apply. Boom. And what did you see? You didn't see nothing. right? The image basically did not change whatsoever, and that's what we want, all right? Now, if I click and drag at what we just created, that's what we just created, okay? So this becomes our basis for our embroidery design. Now, if we go into wireframe mode, really it's called outline here in Inkscape. If we go to the view menu and choose display mode and choose outline, you could see those outlines is what was created for us. And this is what InkStitch will use to convert that information into stitches for us. All right. Now, I have a toggle key set up to switch. Alt Q switches between normal and outline mode. Okay, you're going to want to set that up. All right, so we have a separate video on keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to talk a lot about keyboard shortcuts throughout this video. I use keyboard shortcuts. It's going to be way quicker for you to design things if you put certain keyboard shortcuts to memory. I have a video, I'll link to it in the listing description below, on creating keyboard shortcuts, not only for Inkscape, but also InkStitch as well. And if you go into the video description, you can copy and paste all the keyboard shortcuts I think you should put to memory. Print them off on a piece of paper, post them up next to your desk where you're doing your design work, and refer to those as often as you need to until you've got all of those keyboard shortcuts down pat. Spend the time learning the keyboard shortcuts, using the keyboard shortcuts, and then it will literally just become second nature to you. You won't even think about it. But use those keyboard shortcuts. It's going to save you a lot of time in your design work. All right. So, where do we begin? Well, the first thing that we want to do is select the bee that was created for us and change its size to what we actually want. So I'm going to change my unit values here to inches, and I got my little lock turned on, so when I change the width, the height will change in proportion, and I'm going to make my little bee 3 inches wide. Okay? So maybe we're going to stitch it on a pair of jeans, or I don't know, but whatever. But this is what I decided. We're going to make our little bee 3 inches wide. All right, so now he's 3 inches wide. Now let's go over to our layers palette. Now what I'm going to do is create a couple of layers. You don't have to do this, but this is kind of how I'm going to break it down, and this is usually how I will do it, is this layer, layer 1, is going to be our original image. So I will just name it original image. Okay, and then layer 2, we're going to have some fill areas. Now, this is a really simple little graphic, so it's not going to be too big a deal. And we're going to have some satin. Okay, so there we go. Fill areas, satin, original image. Now, the image, the original image, I am going to go ahead and just lock it. Hit the lock key. So this original image here, I can no longer select it. I can't move it. I can't do anything with it. Okay. And then for the path, we're going to move the path to, let's see, let's move the path. Let's right click and choose move to, and let's choose satin. Okay, because most of what we're seeing in this black, that is all going to become satin eventually. All right. So now let's work on our fill areas. How are we going to choose our fill areas? Well, what we're going to do is grab our paint bucket tool here, which is the U key on our keyboard, and we're just going to click right here and click right here. Okay. Now you can see what it did. It created us a couple of shapes, and we have a green stroke applied to those, which I do not want. So I want a fill color, so I'm going to select both of them. I want a fill color of something different. I want a fill color, oh, it's up here, this right here. So I'm going to go D, that's my dropper, and when I click on that, notice that these pieces are now the same color as that one. Pretty nifty stuff, huh? So what we're going to do is select those two, and then shift click on this red X. That will get rid of that green stroke. See, that was pretty simple there. All right. Now, one thing you will see with our paint bucket tool, I should point this out. See how this, like, if we go into outline mode, you see how it doesn't quite exactly match up perfectly. All right. And that could be because of the tolerance setting. Let's just see, or the threshold setting. Let's see if we want to change that. So let's try that real quick. And then I want to show you something else here. So let's get rid of those shapes that we just created. Okay. And let's use our paint bucket tool again. But this time, let's use a threshold of, say, 10. And then you see it says fill by visible colors, but yeah, we could go ahead and leave it that. That's fine. We'll go ahead and leave it at that. So now when we click on this, see how much closer it was? It was considerably closer that time. So what if I did 15 threshold? Okay, let's click on that. Maybe it's even closer yet. All right. So that, I don't know. Let's see. What if we choose close gaps? That close gaps means if there's a small, when you use the paint bucket tool, it has to be surrounded, right? But if there was a small gap in the line, it would close that for us automatically. So it would create the shape that we're trying to create. But we could choose this right here, grow or shrink by. All right. And so we're going to grow this area by, let's do by a millimeter. And so now when we click in there, watch what happens. Boom. Now that area is 1 millimeter bigger than what that path is. So that's good because that black outline that we're going to put is going to be satin, so that will cover that up. Okay, so I'm probably going to say, let's grow it by 1.5 millimeters. Okay, and boom, grow it by 1.5 millimeters. Okay, so now when we put our satin on there, this shape will definitely be covered up. So that will work out really good for us. All right, so now how do we take care of our yellow shape? Well, I think the easiest way to do that is to go into wireframe mode or outline mode, and let's grab our pen tool right here. That is the B key on our keyboard, and we're going to click different spots right in the middle of this border. So click there, for example, and come down here, and click there, for example, and click there, and click there, and click there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and then we're going to come back to the beginning. Now, when we're using that pen tool, make sure that this first option is selected here for mode, which is the regular Bezier path. That's where we want to start our learning curve. There's some other options there, but that's the simplest one. And you can see what we did there by clicking, 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 right? All we did was create a bunch of straight line segments, right? So now we can go into our node edit tool here, which is the N key on our keyboard. And now I'm just going to click and drag that path till it's roughly in the middle. 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 This is a straight line segment, but that's okay. And this one, we could just double click right here. See how it's a little bit close? We could just pull it down so it's roughly in the middle. And this last segment, roughly in the middle. Now, what if you clicked and you don't feel like you have real control over exactly that curve the way you want it? Well, there is an option here. It's right here. It's show transformation handles. So when we click on a node, see now we've got transformation handles. So see now how we can control exactly how that works. Okay, see that? We can control exactly. So if you don't see your transformation handles when you click on a node, that means that icon is turned off. And sometimes that's useful. That's why we have the ability to turn it on and off. Sometimes those transformation handles get in our way. But now we have this shape roughly in the middle of our satin border, what will become our satin border. So you see how when we did this, we grew it by 1.5 millimeters. That's kind of what we did here, but we did it manually. That's the difference, okay? So now that we've got that taken care of, let's go back into normal mode here. It's the wrong color. So we'll go back to our dropper and click on our yellow, and now it is the right color. All right. Now these three objects are not on the right layer now because they're on my satin layer. So I'm going to right click and choose Move to Layer, and we want to move to Layer Fill. Okay, so now those are on my right layer, and I am going to turn off the visibility of those objects. Okay, usually when I'm done digitizing something, I like to turn the visibility off. Now technically we're not quite done with the digitizing because we haven't assigned any parameters to how that's going to stitch, but that's okay. For right now, that's okay. All right. So now, I've just turned off my fill area, and now we're going to work on our satin areas. Okay. Now this is the part that is kind of sort of complicated. There's no way to really sugarcoat it. It is a little bit complicated, but again, I'm going to encourage you to watch this video 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right? And just take it bit by bit. And when you do that, I think you'll be pretty successful. And if you can master this little bee, then you really should be able to master any logo you'll come across because it's the exact same process. Okay? So, where do we begin? Well, the first thing we need to do is right now we have a single path, but you can see as we look on our screen, we've got lots of bits and pieces here. So we need to break it all apart into those individual bits and pieces. So to break something apart, the keyboard shortcut is Shift-Control-K, right? It's all busted up, but you could also go to Path and choose Break Apart there as well. And you can see there's the keyboard shortcut of Shift-Control-K. Now, when we're trying to convert something into satin, we cannot have any fill. And all of this has a fill. So we're going to select all of that, and we're going to left mouse click on the big red X. That gets rid of the fill. Now, none of it has fill, but it also doesn't have a stroke, which it needs to convert to satin. So we're going to shift click on our black, and now we have a stroke. Now the problem is we got a thick stroke, so we're going to change that. Change our thickness. So we're going to do fill and stroke style down to 0.5 millimeter. Hey, that just makes it a little bit thinner for us. All right. So now where do we want to begin on our fella here? Well, I think I will take you. Where do I want to take you? Okay. Let's start right here. Let's start on the eyeballs, all right? What are our eyes here? Our eyes are circles, okay? One thing to know about circles, when we're talking about vector artwork, circles should have 4 nodes, typically, defined by each quadrant of the circle, okay? So if we double-click on this circle, you can see that we don't have 4 nodes. We've got a gazillion. So the first step might be to go to Path and Simplify. Sometimes when we have a gazillion nodes, that's a good first step, all right? Now, if we were going to use the ellipse tool here inside Inkscape, we would get a nice perfect circle. This is not a nice perfect circle, all right? But imagine a circle and 4 equal quadrants. So I'm going to create a node here by double-clicking. I'm going to create a node here by double-clicking, and I'm going to create a node here by double-clicking. Now, if you can imagine this, I'm going to hit Control-Alt and click on my mouse. Click on my mouse, 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 click and click. All right, so now you can kind of see this is what a typical circle would consist of. 4 nodes, each quadrant being roughly equal, right? You see that. All right, so the first thing that we have to think about is how do we want this to stitch out? Okay, I want to stitch this out in satin stitches. I know that. But then what direction do I want my satin stitches to be? I want my satin stitches to go basically what I would consider horizontally, but at an angle, okay? So I want them to go this way. Well, if I want my satin stitches to go this way, then my rails have to go the opposite direction, all right? So that's the first thing to understand. Satin needs rails. Well, what's a rail? A rail is two paths, like a railroad track, okay? So I'm going to click on this node here, shift click on this node here, and we're going to choose this option here, which is break path at selected nodes. But we're not going to actually use that button. Pretend that button does not exist, and pretend that the only way we can break those nodes is to use our keyboard shortcut. This is a really important one because you do it all the time. So Shift B, B as in boy, that will break those two nodes, okay? So now, instead of having a circle, what do we really have? We have two paths. Look, if I move that and I move that, you see how we have two rails, okay? So by doing it the way we just did it, our stitches are going to start right there at that node and stitch, 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 and it's going to end right there at that node. That's exactly what we want. So let's try it out. We're going to go into params one time. We're going to go through the menu and then never again. Extensions, InkStitch, params. Notice we have a keyboard shortcut. It says Control-Alt-P. That's what we want to use. Control-Alt-P, go into params. Now, this is just a path with a stroke. So it's going to automatically assume we want running stitches, which we don't want. So as soon as we turn off running stitches, then it's going to say, oh, you want satin columns. So there you go. So see what I was talking about, where the satin started right there at the point of that node, start, and then right there at the end of the node, that's where it ended, right? And now the reason it didn't end in the middle right there, the reason it didn't is because that stitch was too short. So it just eliminated that stitch, and that's why it actually ended just a little bit short there. But when we're dealing with a relatively small object like this, I do like to increase my zigzag spacing to 0.25. So it's just a little bit more dense. But do you see this stitch here, right here, right here, right here? Do you see those stitches? Those are short stitches, right here. And when we see that, I like to back that off to 5. And now you see that it's still there. That one's still there, but the rest of them are basically gone. Okay? And that's the parameter that I would typically use for that. But now you can see that my satin stitches are going in that direction. So we'll do the same thing with this eyeball. Remember, we got a bazillion, so we'll simplify our path, step 1. When we're dealing with a relatively simple shape, like a circle, that simplified path works pretty well, but on a more complicated path, we wouldn't use that because it will give us very odd, bizarre results that we wouldn't like. So now, do the same thing. We'll select that one, shift-click that one, Shift-B to break the nodes. And if you just want to double-check, hey, it's busted up. That's what we need, right? So now, Control-Alt-P to set some params. And remember, we'll turn off running stitch, go over to satin column, set our zigzag spacing to 0.25, set our short stitch inset to 5. Bob's your uncle. There you go. There is your satin stitches. Perfect. Done and dusted. All right. So now we can move on to the macaroni. To do the macaroni, I'm going to go into outline mode because I think you'll be able to see this a little bit better. The first thing I want to do with the macaroni is see how wide this is. Okay, in embroidery, we can only do what we can only do. So let's see how wide this is, step 1. Okay, so you'll see that this is roughly 0.86 millimeters. So what does that tell me? Well, it's slightly less than a millimeter, and that's kind of the threshold. Can we stitch 0.8? Yes, we can, but it's absolutely microscopic. All right, so we may not want to stitch 0.8. So we may want to make this a little bit bigger. But for right now, we're just going to leave it the way it is and stitch it out the way it is. So for the little macaroni, double click, right? We could do the same thing. We could choose path and simplify and get rid of some of those nodes. Our path didn't change that much, so that's fine. But what we need to do when we're dealing with a shape like this, imagine if this was like the letter A or U or whatever, right? What we're going to do right there at the tip, we're going to add a node. And right here at this tip, we're going to add a node. Even though we got one right there, we're just going to add one right there. Shift key, so we're going to select that one. Shift key, select this one. Same thing, Shift B. Okay. So now we have we still have two paths again. So you see here, oops, I grabbed the wrong one. This little guy. So see, we have this path, right? And we have this path. So we have our rails. Let's go ahead and convert this to satin. Now, it's not going to do a very good job, but I'm going to explain why here in a moment. And you're like, aha, well, that makes sense. So you can see here, we've converted this to satin, and boy, that does not look very pretty. We are going to back this off to 5, back our density off to 0.25, and you can see that is not going to help the situation. So let's go ahead and apply and quit, and let's understand what's happening here. Well, when we're dealing with satins, there's a things called rungs. And what the rungs will do is it will tell InkStitch exactly how we want our stitch angles to be. But I will not show you how to do rungs because I don't think you should be using rungs. So what happens is when InkStitch doesn't have rungs, it assumes we want to use the nodes. But our nodes are all willy-nilly here. We didn't put those nodes in there. When we converted the image to a vector, InkScape put those nodes willy-nilly. So what we need to do is take control of those nodes and say, no, this is how it needs to be. And so I'll show you. So here we have that. Now this node is directly across from that node, so we can leave that alone. Now this node here, do we need it? No, we could just get rid of it. Our path didn't change. Do we need this one? No, not really. Now our path did change a little bit there. So we can leave that one, and let's add a mate to it directly across from it. Because if we left this way, that's how our stitch angles would be. And we don't want that. We want our stitch angles to be right across from another. So we don't need that node, but we do need one directly across. We don't need this one. This one's okay, but we'll put one directly across and get rid of this one. Control Alt, left click on our mouse. Left click on our mouse. Do we need this one? Nah, not really. But we'll put one right across from this one. Get rid of this one and get rid of that one. So see how all these have a mate now? Excellent. So now when we go into params, we should see perfect satin stitch results. Okay? And what do we see? Perfect satin stitch results. Okay, excellent. So that's the good news. The bad news is the first time out, you're probably not going to have perfect results. All right? And for a variety of reasons. And we'll probably see that as we go through here and doing this satin part of it. We'll choose apply and quit. But if you don't get perfect results, it's because there's a problem with the nodes. Okay, that's the long and short of it. All right. As we go through this project, we'll probably run into a situation that'll explain all that a little bit more for you. All right. So now we've taken care of the mouth here. We've taken care of the eyes. And remember, I like to, as I finish a piece, I like to go ahead and just turn off the visibility so I know that that part of the project is done. All right. So now we can move on to the next part of the project. What do we want to do next? Well, let's take the next easiest piece, and that's these little guys right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is double click on my path, and I want to bust these apart. So those I want busted, and these I want busted. So I selected those two nodes, so I selected these two, shift key, selected these two. Okay, so now I have all four, shift B to bust those apart. Okay, now right now they're still connected, to the rest of it. But I need to bust those apart. So Shift Control K, and now you will see that this is now been separated, okay? So now I'm just dealing with these two. So what do we need to do then to change these to satin? Well, I'm going to double click. Remember right here at the tip, Shift B, right? So now we have two paths. You can see that if we zoom in here a little bit. See here? We now have two paths, but we've got all these nodes, so maybe we'll simplify. Okay, that helps us a little bit. But now we need to pair them up, right? We know that. So, or get rid of them, one or the other. So like this guy doesn't have a mate. This guy doesn't have a mate. This guy can have a mate right there. And this guy will move him down ever so slightly so he's more or less right across, okay? So now let's go ahead and convert that into satin stitch. Now, because it's small, right? Because it's a fairly small piece, I am going to increase the density to 0.25 and my short stitch inset to 5. That's kind of my standard param there. But you can see we get perfect satin stitch results. So that takes care of that piece. And now we're going to duplicate the same process right here. So we have a node right at the tip. Shift B. We can choose path and simplify. Get rid of a couple of nodes. You can see all those paired up pretty well except that guy right there. So all those are paired up pretty well. So we could just convert those. Now I would not normally convert each piece by piece like this. I would just go through, edit the whole design, and do it all in one fell swoop. But I'm just trying to show you the process here. So we're doing it over and over and over and over again. Okay? So we short set inset, and we could save a preset and call this, you know, standard small satin or something like that. And so all these settings, we can just have that as a preset, and we don't have to do it over and over and over again. In fact, let's just do that. Let's go ahead and add. We gotta put in a name. So we'll do small satin basic, something, you know, whatever you want to name it, and click add. And so now, anytime we want to apply those parameters, we could just pull that up. So we'll choose apply and quit, and you can see that antenna is perfect. Okay, so when we're done with a piece, remember we just select it and let's go ahead and hide it, and now we know that that piece is done. Okay. So now, what do we want to do? Well, I think what we want to do now is, let's see here. What do we want to do? All right, let's bust off his tail. Let's bust off his tail. I think that'll be a pretty easy piece. So we're going to select those two nodes where they connect to the main body. Shift B. Okay. Now we have to bust his tail off from the rest of it. So Shift Control K. All right. So now his tail's been busted. This is now a totally separate piece from the rest. So what do we need to do to turn it into satin? Right there at the tip, right? Shift B. We'll go ahead and get rid of this one. I guess we can't. But let's add a node over here and a node over here, and now we can get rid of these two. Okay? We need a node directly across from that one. We need to get rid of that one, then we got that one. So now we can convert it to satin. Now this isn't what I would consider a small piece, all right? So we're just going to go with our basic satin stitch on this one. Nothing special. But you can see we do get perfect satin. So let's go ahead and hit apply and quit. And now we've finished our tail. So we go ahead and get rid of that piece. So now what do we want to do? Well, let's see here. Let me think about this. I know I want to tackle these wings. I got to just think about how I want to tackle these wings. Let me think about this for just a moment here. All right. I think I know how I want to do it. So what we're going to do, first of all, is select those two nodes where those wings are attached, and we are going to Shift B, step one. Now we got to bust those wings apart from the main body, Shift Control K, and you will see that the wings are in fact busted. So that part is good. But what we're going to do here is we need to create some rails. Okay. Now this part is probably just a touch complicated. So first things first, you can see here we've got a bazillion nodes. So let's see if we can simplify the path without the shape of our path changing too much. Okay, yes, it did. All right, so now we're going to use this as a rail too. So we're going to do the same thing. Simplify, get rid of some of those nodes. Our path did not change very significantly. Simplify, our path did not change very significantly. So far, so good. So that part's good. Now, what I want to do here is I'm going to click here. I want to click on that path and grab my pen tool. Now, when I do that, you see how that highlights in blue? What that does is it's going to add to the existing path. So when we do that, so we're going to click there, and you see here we're going to add to the existing path, and we're going to click down here. And then we're going to click over here, and that's going to add to the existing path. Okay? So now we're going to switch over to our node tool. And remember before we did that kind of where we bent it a little bit? Now I don't know if I want to do that. Let's undo that. But I do need this to be a little bit wider right here. So I need it to kind of connect like that. And this, I don't know. Let's go ahead and turn on our transformation handle. I don't know how I want to handle that exactly. We'll just move that in a little bit, something like that. All right. So now what we need to do is we have this piece, and of course the wings are separate from the main body. So now what we need to do is figure out, well, how are we going to make all of this into a satin? And I think what we're going to do here is we're going to break it up top here. So I don't know. I think this will be okay. We can do it a variety of different ways. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break it right here and right here. So we created a node. We're going to definitely get rid of our transformation handles. They're in the way. Okay. So we're going to select that one, shift click on that one, shift click on this one, and we're going to break it apart. Okay. So that's kind of step one. Then these two down here, we're going to click right there at the corner. We're going to break it apart right there too. Shift B. All right. And we're going to break it right here as well. And now none of this makes sense at the moment, but if we do Shift Control K, we'll break that apart. And let's see, what else do we need to do? So now this piece is broken away. Excellent. And this piece is broken away. And then what do we got here? We need to still break this piece. Shift Control K and this piece. Shift Control K. All right. So this piece and this piece is now broken away. So we'll select both of those and we'll combine them, Control K. And then we have this piece and this piece. Okay. So we are going to combine those, Control K. And then we have this piece and this piece. And we're going to combine that. All right. Now, none of that makes sense. And I totally get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. None of that makes sense at the moment. But when you watch that back, maybe it will click. Maybe it won't. But what we're going to do here, let's just follow along here. We're going to hold down our Alt key and we're going to swipe through this mess right up top here. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and go into params, Control Alt P, that's my keyboard shortcut. And let's turn that into satin. Now, of course, we did not modify the nodes in any way, shape, or form. So you're going to see that it's not going to turn out perfectly, obviously. But do you notice that we more or less have those wings in that satin column the way we want? Now, it's not perfect just yet. We're going to make some adjustments, but you can see we're pretty close, right? So let's go ahead and hit apply and quit. Now let's look at each piece. Let's start right here. Okay, this is the easiest piece. So we need a buddy. Do we need this one? Maybe not, maybe not. All right. So if we look at that piece by itself, what are we going to see? Should see a perfect satin column now. And we do. So that's perfect. Moving on. So now let's take care of this side. What do we got to do? Well, let's get rid of the ones that we know we got to get rid of. So that's the start point. We don't need that one. We can leave that one, but we don't need that one. So I'm just Control Alt, and then deleting on these ones that I don't feel we need. Okay, we can leave that one. We don't need this. Maybe we do. See, when we did that, it changed the shape quite dramatically. So we'll add one right across from it. We don't need that one. Now let's take a look at that all by itself. We paired them all up. We should get nice satin stitch results. All the way around the bend, and you can see we do get nice satin stitch results. Okay, so now all we got to do is take care of this side. Same way. That's got a pair. That's got a pair directly across from it. We'll add one there directly across. We don't need that. Don't need that. We'll add one directly across. I wasn't happy with that, so we'll add one. Delete that one. Don't need that. Don't need that. We'll go ahead and leave that one. We'll add one directly across, then we don't need that or that. Okay, so now we should have perfect satin coming back around this way. And it looks like we do. Excellent. So now let's look at all of those elements together and we'll see what the issue is. There is one remaining issue, which we will fix, but I just want you to see it all together. And you can see what the issue is. The issue is right here in the middle, okay? It's not connecting right there in the middle, all right? But simple fix. That's a simple fix. So we are connecting down here at the bottom, but we're not connecting here at the middle because these two are not connected, obviously. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to change it. So we're going to bring that over to here, that over here. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Make sure that those two ends of the rails are in fact connecting. So now watch. So we'll just double check and watch how that stitches out. Excellent. Okay, now you see this right here? We're going to have a little bit of a gap there, but we're going to fix that, right? Because all we have to do to fix that is just extend those rails a little bit. That's it. That's all we got to do. Okay, so now when we take a look at it, that piece is going to stitch first the way we've got it set up. And that's going to come around. You can see that covers it up. So that's going to give us a nice stitch result. Now the one concern that I do have that we haven't really looked at is that satin border going to cover the fill area that we need it to cover? And the answer is yes, because look at those fill objects. And you can see that that satin is going to cover the fill objects. No issues there. So we're good to go there. All right. So that piece is now, those pieces are now done. All right. So we're going to we're in our selection tool. We hold down our Alt key. We're going to swipe through all that monkey business. Okay. We're going to just turn off the visibility. We're on the right layer. We just don't want that to be visible. Okay? So now we have to move on to kind of what's left here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do a mass edit at this point and get rid of some stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select that. We're going to break it right there. This, we're going to, let's break it right here. Okay. And then this, we are going to break it right there. And then over here, we're going to break it right there. So I need these pieces all to be separate. So right here, we're going to break it right there. Okay, then this right here, we're going to break it right there. Then we're going to break it right there. And then up top here, we're going to break it right there. Okay, so when I'm breaking it, all I'm doing is hitting Shift B, Shift B, Shift B, Shift B, Shift B. And then I'm going to select all of this and hit Shift Control K. Now that should have kind of broken everything up. So you see how that's one piece and this is one piece. And so all of these pieces are now separate. You see that? Okay. So for example, if I were to take this piece now right here, this piece right here, and this piece right here, and I am going to combine those together, Control K, okay? That is now ready to be converted to satin, all right? So, but we haven't adjusted our nodes. So let's hit Path and Simplify. Keep an eye on our path. It did not change that much, so that's good. So let's just see what happens here, all right? So we're going to get rid of this node. Now that path did change, and we have a node that's directly across. So let's add a node over here and get rid of that one. Okay. Can we get rid of this without the path changing? Yes. We'll leave that one. Put a mate to it there. We'll put a mate to that one there. This one here we'll keep. We'll get rid of that. This one we don't need. That one's okay. And then we've got this node way over here. Okay. We can't have that like that. But for right now, how am I going to handle this? All right, let's do this. So I need a path right here. So we're going to hit B and use our pen tool to connect those two. And then we're going to choose our node edit tool. Okay, we're going to do something like that. Okay, and then we're going to end. We're going to end it right here. So Shift B. And then up top here, we're going to do the same thing. B, we're going to connect those two. Go to our node tool. Round that over. And then we need to break it right there. Okay? So now that should be a perfect satin. We've edited our nodes. We can turn off our running stitch and see what we get for a satin column. And oh boy, it did not give us a perfect satin column. So we definitely have an issue with nodes. Don't know exactly where. Okay, it's not there. It's right there. Okay, those two are not connected. So how do we connect two nodes that are not connected? To join selected nodes, you hit Shift J. Okay, we probably have a similar situation down here. We'll hit Shift J. Okay, so now let's try that again. Control Alt P. See, so there is a little bit to it. But once you understand the fundamentals, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But you can see it started right there, the satin stitch right there at the point. Now, this isn't happening exactly like I want it to, but it did all the way up to there. Okay, so that's good. So now we just have to kind of finesse this a little bit. So what's happening here? Well, what we could do is, the reason that that's happened is because we have an extra node, and we're just going to move it like that. Now it will do it the way it should do it. I had an extra node in there. But now you'll watch up top there, we'll get pretty much a perfect result. Come around the bend. Very nice, right? Exactly what we need. Okay? That's the part that is a little bit hard to grasp, and I certainly understand that, especially for somebody brand new. But let's just keep going here. These two segments, we're going to combine, Control K. Okay, those are two rails. We're going to use our pen tool to connect the two. Now, where it connected there, we're going to go back to our node tool. Those nodes are not connected. Okay, so we're going to select them, Shift J, that connects those two nodes, and we do the same thing down here. Okay, so we're going to go to our pen tool, connect those two, go to our node tool, select those two, Shift J. Now they are connected over here, and then we're just going to round that off. So our satin's going to start there. Now we've got a million nodes on this path. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to choose path and simplify and make sure our path doesn't change that significantly, which it didn't appear to. So now we can come in here and get rid of some nodes that we don't need. Okay. Probably don't need that one. We'll leave that one. We'll get rid of that one. We'll leave those two. This one at the corner is fine. Do something like that. Okay. But this guy needs a mate. I don't like that. So let's add a node there. Now, why is it doing that? It's acting all kinds of goofy, but that's fine. We'll just add a node there. So when it acts goofy like this, we'll click that segment, Shift L. And what that does is it's supposed to make that a straight line. But this guy right here needs to be a corner node. That's the problem. Okay? So if we put that back to Shift L, that'll straighten that line out, and then we can kind of go ahead and control it from there. Okay? We'll go ahead and turn on our transformation handle so I can control this a little bit better. And what I need to have happen here is this needs to be just going with the flow of this outside one. So I think I'll be happy with that. All right. So now let's go ahead and try this one. Control Alt P for parameters. We'll put that into a satin column. Now it's not letting us, and that's probably because somewhere along the line this is not split up where we need it to be. Right there. This needs to be Shift B. Right there. Shift B. So we need two separate pieces there. Now we have it. So now let's go back in to params. You know what though? I don't think we do. Nope, we don't. Because I forgot to break it up here. So Shift B up there too. Now we can go into params and turn it into satin. I forgot to break the rails apart is what I forgot to do. So now you can see, starts the satin there, comes up, and we have beautiful satin right there. We'll choose apply and quit. All right, so that's been turned into satin. That's been turned into satin. So now what we have is we have this outside path. Okay, that's what we got left. So what we need to do is take this piece and this piece, and what we need to do is we need to combine those with a new segment. So if we hit Alt-J, now we can't do that because those are two separate paths. And we need that piece and this piece to be one. So first of all, we're going to join it. And then, same thing here. We're going to take those two little snippets, join it with the big one, Control K, and now we can edit this thing. So first things first, where those segments are, we're going to select that node and this node, and Alt-J. That combines them with a new line. This node and this node, Alt-J. Combines them with a new line. See that? Where there was a gap, look at here. Big gap. Big gap. Okay? Alt-J. Combines it with a line. What are we going to do with that line? Well, we're going to bend it, right? So it's kind of been smoothed out there, right? And then what are we going to do? Here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take that node, shift-click this node, Alt-J, okay? And then we can just take that straight line segment. What do we do here? Go back into our node tool here. We did something we shouldn't have. We'll try that again. Right here and Alt-J. Straight line segment. Perfect. So we're going to delete that node and we're just going to bend this path just a little bit here. All right. So this is what we have. We have that outside piece. Okay, that's what we have right now. And we have this little piece that's part of the inside. But that's it. That's all we have. So we have this piece, but the rest of this, let's go ahead and just turn this off because those pieces are done. We don't have those pieces anymore. This is all we have left here. Okay, so for example, I don't really know exactly how this is all going to work, but let's go ahead and let's combine it, Control K. Let's simplify it so we don't have quite so many nodes. And now let's just kind of connect the dots here. So this piece and this piece we can connect, Alt-J. This piece and this piece we can connect, Alt-J. Okay. What else we got? We can go ahead and connect this piece and this piece, and we can hit Alt-J. And then finally, this piece and this piece, we can hit Alt-J. Okay. So now those pieces that we connected, I'm just going to come in here and just kind of curve them out so this all kind of goes the same way. That one will leave straight. This one we will curve out a little bit. And this one will curve out a little bit. So that becomes our new satin border. Okay. But what we have to do is we have to come in here and choose, first of all, those two sides have to be one. First of all, Control K. Okay, those are two rails, but now we need to define where we're going to start and stop. So I'm just going to randomly pick right there, right here, and Shift B. That's where we're going to break it. And now we have to pair all these, all these up. We'll get rid of that one. Okay, we'll get rid of our transformation handles for right now. We'll pair that one up. We'll pair that one up. We don't need that one. We can leave that one. We don't need that, or that. That. Let's go ahead and leave that one. That's a new stitch angle right there. But we don't need that. I wonder if we hit path and simplify again. Because we did one path, but we didn't do the other. Okay. That's better. So back to the top here. So you see here, we need to break it apart right here. Shift B. So that has been broken apart. So I don't think we need this one. We'll leave that one. Have a mate. We don't need that one. This one we'll leave. We'll have a mate. We don't need that one or that one. This one we will leave, but we don't need that. This one we will leave. Don't need that. Don't need that. That. We'll add one there. Don't need that one. We can add one there. And we don't need that one. All right, so now that should convert into satin stitch very nicely. And you can see that, in fact, it does convert to satin stitch very nicely. Even where it kind of widens out there, what have you, that looks very nice. All right. Well, we got that all taken care of. So I think that's good. Let's go ahead and create a new layer, and let's call it satin dashes. And all these bits over here, we are going to select that and right click and choose move to layer, and we're going to do it satin 1. Perfect. Okay, and we're going to turn the visibility of those off temporarily. I want to look at everything but that. Okay, so all this stuff that we turned off the visibility on, we're going to turn it all on now. Okay, of our satin, and we're going to look at this, and we're going to see something happen here. Right here, where this is overlapping right here, we don't need that section. Okay, we don't need that section. You can see we're not really connected perfectly right here, right, now that we see that, but we don't need this. So no worries. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to click right there, okay, and we're going to click down here, and those two spots, we're going to do Shift B, where we're going to break it apart. We don't need that. And then over here, we're going to add a node. And down here, we're going to add a node. And right there, we're going to break those because we don't need them. So now I can delete this. We could delete that and that. And so now that satin's not going to go over there. And then you can see we could break this. And now that satin is going to go right back to here. All right. So now, in theory, we are going to extend this just a little bit. All right. So now let's test this all out and see what it looks like. Now I know this was quite a task. I do know that, obviously. But you can see we more or less have what we need, except for there's a segment here that it's not stitching for some reason. I don't know why that is. So let's look at that. I'm not sure why it quit there. Oh, okay. Those two nodes are not joined. So we will join those together, Shift J, and join these together, Shift J, and now that section will stitch. Excellent. So now let's go ahead and look at the whole thing together one more time. So let's look at it one more time here. All right, I think that's good. Now, let's look at that. I want to see something right here. Not super happy with. There, yeah, okay. I was short a node. That's what no, I'm not actually short a node because, all right, I am going to change this a little bit right here. So I'm going to grab my pen tool and just create one extra little path there. And I think that is now going to stitch the way I want it to. It's just a tiny little change right there, but I think it was warranted. Right? Yes. So that's what I wanted right there. All right. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go back into normal mode. Let's look at how this is going to look if we were actually do a realistic preview of it. Just real quick. Now this does take a little bit of time to generate this realistic preview. So you kind of see how we went through this whole thing very methodically, step by step by step, breaking that outline apart, envisioning how we wanted this all to stitch out. But now you can see our little bee guy here. Now let's do this. Let's turn, we did not ever assign our fill areas. So let's turn those on for a moment. So we never assigned our fill areas. So we'll go into params here and we'll define that as a fill. And the only thing we're going to do here is change the angle of our fill to 45. And then we'll choose apply and quit. And then on these guys, what I want to do here is I want to define these separately because I want to define a stitch angle of 35 on that one. And then this one, I want to define the stitch angle of negative 35. So it's going to do the fill by default, but we want to do negative 35. And choose apply and quit. So now I can look at that whole thing. We'll do the stitch preview again. This time with our fill applied. So it's going to take a little bit longer. There we go. And now you can see how that different stitch angles will make it look a little bit nicer. You can see how that satin stitch is going to stitch out. All looks really good. Very, very pleased with that result so far. Now, we didn't do the little swirly gig on the back end, and we have not optimized this for sewing yet. Those are 2 additional steps that we need to make. But I think I'm going to stop this right here and handle the heart piece separately. And then we will also come back in and do a separate video on optimizing how this all actually needs to stitch out. But if you got this far, you're doing really good. So I hope you learned something, and definitely tune in for the rest of the doing the heart tail, and then how we're going to optimize the design for final stitch out. Thanks for watching.